Hey second grade, welcome back to Mr. News art class. It's wonderful to see all of your smiling faces. In last week's lesson, we talked about Romero Britto and the different ways that he showed joy to try to make people smile. Today, we're continuing our discussion about being expressive with our artwork, but today we're going to focus on a less fun emotion. We're going to talk about sadness. Sadness is a very important part of being a human. Every human feels sad sometimes, and that's perfectly normal, and it's actually a good thing. Sadness is a feeling that helps us to connect with other people, and it helps us deal with problems that happen around us in the world and to us in our lives. And if we're talking about sadness in art, we can't even touch that without talking about Pablo Picasso's Blue Period. Pablo Picasso was an absolutely incredible artist from a very young age. His father was an art teacher, and he went to art school for college. And when Picasso graduated from college, he was poor. He had no money. He tried to live in an apartment, but he couldn't afford to buy food. He couldn't afford to pay his rent. He was a lot of times late paying for his rent. He couldn't even afford to heat his apartment. He couldn't afford to buy oil for his radiator to heat his apartment. So on winter nights, he'd be super, super cold, sleeping on either a cot or a mattress on the floor, not even in a proper bed. During this time, he still made a lot of artwork, but he had to do it on the cheap. He only bought blue, white, and black paint. Just those three colors, just blue, and then white and black to mix with the blue to make it lighter or darker. And he was trying to make money by selling his artwork, selling his paintings. But a lot of times he ended up having to sell them for really cheap or trade them for food because, you know, if nobody had bought any of his paintings, he didn't have any money to buy food. So sometimes he would even talk to a grocer, you know, a person selling fruit and stuff. He would say, hey, I'll give you this painting if you give me dinner tonight. Things like that. Picasso's Blue Period artwork shows us what it's like to be poor, cold, tired, hungry, and unable to pay your bills. It's a very sad and lonely feeling. These pictures are what we call monochromatic. It's a big, long, fancy word that you don't really need to remember, but it just means one color. It's all blue, and we're going to be using one color to make our expressive pictures today. So if we're talking about a monochromatic picture, that means that no matter what materials I'm using, I can only choose one color. For this picture, since we're talking about Pablo Picasso's Blue Period, we're going to use blue because we're expressing sadness in today's picture. And blue is the color we associate with sadness. So I'm going to get out all the things I have that are blue. I have a blue marker. See, this crayon is blue-green. Does that really count? Can I really use that? I might not. I probably will choose not to, but I'm going to get it out anyway. This one says blue. This one says cerulean, which is definitely a blue. This one says bluetiful, which is a blue. Let's see, I think I have an indigo, which is a dark bluish, is almost on the purple side of the spectrum. I think that's it for crayons. For colored pencils, what do I have that's blue? I have sky blue. I have blue. That's a purple. Okay. All right. That's all the blue supplies that I have. Oh, well, that depends. I think, you know, I do have watercolor paint as well, but in the interest of not making any more messes right now, I'm going to put that away. I'm going to focus on these materials right here. This is all of my blues. Now, if it was a true monochromatic, then I would just pick one and use nothing else, like none of those, just this one, and I would do varying degrees of light and dark with just this one crayon by, you know, pushing hard to make dark or being soft and gentle to make light. If it was true monochromatic, that's what I would be doing, but that, yeah. Anything that's blue. Anything that's blue. And sure, I'll even include the blue-green in there. That's fine. Okay, well, I've just ruined that paper. Flip it to the back. And staying with the Picasso blue period theme, we're going to draw a guitar, and then we're going to color it blue. So, you could do this with a pencil first and then trace with a Sharpie. I'm just going to draw it with a Sharpie. We're going to draw a guitar. I'm going to start by making the, what is it called, the neck of the guitar, the long piece. Then there's going to be the base of the guitar and then the top. So I'm going to start with the neck is going to be 2 long lines that go from about the middle of my page to close to the top, but not quite touching the top. Close that off on both ends, make it a rectangle. At the bottom here, there's going to be like the big figure 8 shape. Think of it like the number 8, except you're not going to crisscross or close off in the middle. So you see how it's pinched in the middle, but it doesn't come all the way to the, all the way together. And then we want a similar shape up top, and kind of like that. Now this, the neck of the guitar, is where the strings will be. The top up here is where like the knobs are to tighten the strings. The bass down here is where you pluck the strings, and where you pluck them there's a hole into the guitar. So let's draw that hole. And then there's like on the other side of the hole, so here's where the neck is, flip to the other side of the hole, there's like a little piece that holds all the strings together, right? Now there could be some more details if you wanted, but that's a basic guitar. What I'm going to do is give it a little bit of depth by just making a little bit of a diagonal line coming down from the bottom corner, and then the same diagonal line coming down from this top corner, and then follow mirroring this, this line right here. Okay, you see how that gives it a little bit of three-dimensionality, makes it look 3D. I could do the same thing up here, but it's really not necessary up here because this part is nowhere near as thick. Anyway, now we're ready to start thinking about where we want our different blue colors to go. One of the things that Pablo Picasso did in his later artwork is something called cubism, where he was breaking everything down into basic shapes, like, blocky shapes. We could do something similar to that by drawing lines that cut through this and breaking it into smaller pieces. It won't be true cubism, but we could do that. We could get that idea. So what I'm going to do is just make, 3 or 4 lines that cut across my picture. Notice I just drew straight across my guitar. There's one. There's another. Maybe I'll have one coming kind of downwards this way. And maybe I'll have one going more upwards this way. It really doesn't matter. Don't do too many because then you'll have tiny little itty bitty sections. You want to give yourself some space. Next, each shape, I need to start coloring. So what do I want to start with? Maybe I'll start with my sky blue and just pick a shape. Don't color over the lines. That was easy. Then maybe I'll move to my beautiful, and I'll color this section. Wow, that is a dark blue. Wow, that's a lot darker than I expected it to be. Is this the first time I've used beautiful before. Wow, I was not expecting it to be that dark though. Maybe next I'll use my blue marker for this area. Maybe next I'll use my blue-green for this area wrapping around. Maybe next I'll use my blue-colored pencil, but I'll do it lightly. I'll be gentle with it. I'm not going to push too hard with it. And I'll do that for the stem here. If I want, I could draw the strings of the guitar. I've chosen not to do that here, mostly because I wanted this to be one big shape for the neck of the guitar. So I chose to leave that detail out. Then I think for this little section, I'm going to use the same colored pencil, but push. Push, push hard, push hard, like a gorilla. See the difference? Pushing hard, not pushing hard. Same colored pencil. Anyway, I'm going to carry on and finish this whole picture, even the background, all of these empty spaces, doing the same thought. Just back and forth between all my different colors. I haven't used indigo yet. Okay, so one little addendum. I did say we were using just a bunch of blues, but I also used black, and I also left a couple of spaces white. Because when you're making a monochromatic artwork, really what you're saying is I'm using blue, and I'm using lighter versions of blue. And what happens to blue if you lighten it all the way? Well, it would turn into white. Any color, you just brighten it all the way, all the way, all the way, it'll eventually become white. Okay, and then the same thing, like if I make blue darker, right? If I make it darker, 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 eventually it turns black, right? So black and white you can use, but notice that like I colored these black areas in with a black Crayola marker instead of with a Sharpie. I actually had 3 markers that I went through that were not good enough to color. It's not that I went through 3 markers here, but 3 old markers that were dried enough that they couldn't get this shape done. Finally got to one that was a good marker. Anyway, I didn't want to run my Sharpies dry by coloring in these big areas. It's better to run your cheap markers dry that way. Anyway, that is a monochromatic blue guitar. It's got a very sad vibe to it, doesn't it? That's it for today. I hope that you guys are enjoying our series on showing emotion, expressing emotion in our artwork. We started this series with an overview about how size, shape, and color can express feelings in different ways. Then we talked about more joyful ways to make art, and today we talked about sad ways to make art. In next week's lesson, we're going to continue talking about emotions by talking about Jackson Pollock and his aggression. I can't wait to see you then.